Welcome to the City Council meeting of September 3rd, 2019, where we are reconvening from closed session, where direction was given, no action was taken. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion carries.
Moving on to public communication. This is a hearing of non-agenda items. Madam Clerk, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a few speakers. First, I have the cameraman, then Tasha Levinson, and then Bill Spear. Sorry. Give me 1 second. There was a problem with the
Stop
timer.
it.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Well, good evening, Oroville City Council. Glad to be here, first meeting of the month. Just going to be quick in my public comment tonight. Just want to bring up Feather River Boulevard again. I briefly touched on that in the previous public comment. But again, as you're going towards, heading towards Walmart there on Feather River Boulevard, I don't know if you've really noticed, but the road is kind of faded in the markings. And I've especially noticed now, paying more attention to it, having some time to go over it on the bicycle, is I don't know the exact terminology, but there are these little bumps that are reflectors in the road, if you know what those are. And a lot of them are just been horribly chipped, like they've been taken off, hit. I don't know how you can really damage one of these things. I mean, from my understanding, they're a little bit designed to be run over, but some of these look like they're crushed. One particularly I saw, you could see the base of it where the reflectors would have been, but it's just been like clean, flat off. So it's kind of dangerous because people cannot see the markings. Now again, California Vehicle Code 21460, subsection D, that's regarding going over double yellow lines. You can do that to turn left into a business or private roadway as long as you do it safely. But it's kind of hard to do that when you're not sure where exactly to turn. I've seen people turn in the oncoming traffic lane when they're supposed to be in the direction they're supposed to be traveling, but because it's hard to see the line and because there's no cars coming, we'll get over, and they think it's a turn lane when it's actually the oncoming lane when they're trying to get into McDonald's or I know there's a couple other small businesses along there, but it's a little bit dangerous, and I was wondering if we could address that eventually. Thank you.
Tasha Levinson.
I just wanted to suggest with certain items on the consent calendar where I really think they merit some generalized discussion so that everyone understands, so you have the publicity of that in full understanding of what is being thought of and adopted, that they be moved over to the regular calendar. In this instance tonight, it seemed to me in particular item 3 was warranted a fair amount more discussion than would just be apparent, or even from my reading the report than was just there. But I do think you should rethink the agenda a little bit in that way. Thank you.
Bill Spear, and that is the last public speaker I have for public comment.
City Council members, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, really loved coming and participating in our city and covering it in prayer. When we do our pledge, we say one nation under God, indivisible. And so I would suggest that we start opening our city council meetings with a formal prayer. Maybe have a local chaplain come in. In our nation, that's in our roots of our nation, how we started out, that's how it's been. I don't know when it got taken out or not that way, but I think that we should go back. But regardless if we do or not, I'm going to be here and pray over our public officials anyway. But then I could talk about something else. But Lord, we are so grateful for all the people who have stepped up and gone into public service. And we just pray an anointing upon them, your protection upon our police force and for our fire departments and Lord, all the city council members for their families as they lay down their lives for the community. It says, greater love has no one than when they lay down their lives. So we pray your blessings upon our city as we look forward to growing and expanding, that you would give us wisdom as we hire new people, that it would be the people that you have raised up for such a time as this to face the challenges that you have put before us, Lord, for the homeless, that we would make a way for those people, the prisoner. You put the jail in Oroville, and for us to steward over, and for the people from Paradise and Concal, Lord, let us give us that supernatural wisdom, that supernatural provision to answer the call for your kingdom and for your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Any more speakers?
That was the last public speaker, Mr. Mayor.
Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
I'd like to pull item number 3.
I move that we adopt the consent calendar exempt item 3.
I'll second.
Motion carries.
Okay, Councilmember Draper, you pulled item number 3. Would you wish to speak on that?
I just have a couple of questions. It mentions here, and I by the way, I think this is a really needed thing and a great opportunity to get this $160,000 to help with housing, especially affordable housing. But it mentions here that the Department of Housing and Community Development is providing this financial and technical assistance to local governments so they can update planning and land use ordinances to streamline housing approvals and accelerate housing production. Now, I'm all for that, but I'm wondering, are CEQA guidelines and things like that going to be tossed aside, in the hurry to get things done more quickly?
The answer to that is no. I'm sorry, but I have to give you a but. And the but is, of course, that Assembly Bill 430 would say that if it's in our general plan and less than 50 acres, it just cleared the Senate today, and the governor says he'll sign it, which would mean that CEQA, they'd be exempt from CEQA if they're residential less than 50 acres. On the other hand, they still have to meet wetland issues. They'd have to go through state and federal. They have to go rare and endangered species. And the planning staff still has the obligation to raise, in my opinion, all the issues that CEQA would raise. But I have to give you that caveat.
That's okay. Well, I was just wondering what your take was on that, and thank you.
Do we have any other speakers on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers.
Councilmember Pittman.
Quick question on that legislation that's coming through. Is that for pre-existing plan developments that expired?
No. It is for any development that is consistent with the general plan that's inside the sphere of influence.
Okay.
So you couldn't add territory to your sphere, but if it's already in the
Gotcha.
sphere and in the general plan, less than 50 acres, primarily residential,
Gotcha.
then it would be exempt.
But am I correct in assuming that a pre-existing subdivision that simply expired its time would be considered under that?
That is correct. It would
Okay.
also, it would apply to that as well.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Looking for a motion to adopt item number 3.
I move that we adopt item number 3.
I'll second that.
Motion carries.
Moving on to regular business, item number 4. Bill?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Could you start the PowerPoint for me, please? What we're here tonight to talk about is just, I'm going to call these, you're going to have a series over the next few meetings of what I'm going to call cleanup projects. The council over the last couple years has approved many projects, and several of those have not been completed. The reason for that typically surrounds staffing. As our projects have been out there, you know, they've been entered into with the best of intention of using in-house staffing to complete these projects. One of those projects that we were talking about is the roundabout at Table Mountain and Montgomery. It's right down here next to the Boss Burger, and we had talked about it in September of 17. We were going to put in new striping around the roundabout, some pedestrian beacons, and also some rumple strips going into it so that it would slow the traffic going down there and make it safer for the well, essentially the high school kids coming down at lunchtime to go to the Boss Burger and now the burrito places there, so the traffic would be slowed. It would also warn them that there's pedestrians there. Unfortunately, this project never got completed. This is the PowerPoint that was given at the time. This is what we intend on still doing, is putting in these types of smart crosswalks that we have out there, not with the lights in the street so much, but as the signs and the striping that you can see there. And these are our rumble strips that will be slowing traffic, hopefully, as they begin to enter the roundabout from all the directions. I think by putting in these rumble strips, I think you're also going to see the residual effect of vehicles not being backed up for long distances, because people will have to slow down. It'll cause them to brake as they go into there, and that braking will be just enough so that the other car, it'll act as a car yielding so another vehicle can get into the roundabout. So I believe it will help with some of that too. So what we're doing here today is the council has approved this project. They've approved the solar powered flashing beacons, and they've also approved the rumble strips. We did not approve the illuminated crosswalks at the time. You did approve, however, restriping the roundabout. So the council approved about $36,000 for the conceptual construction plus the engineering that was necessary. The engineering has been completed. We just haven't had the manpower to do the work. So what we're here tonight to get permission from the council is to send this out to bid so that we can get this project completed and get this off of our plate. We have several of these that need to be done, and you'll be hearing several more of these that we'd like to take out for bid. We have the money in the maintenance account for roads. In that account, there is approximately $500,000 at this time. There are no allocations out of that account, so there is a true $500,000 available in this account. You're not approving a contract tonight. All you're doing is authorizing us to send this out. We'll send it out, we'll get the bids, and we'll bring the price back for you to award the contract at a later date. This is just merely to update you, let you know where we're at, and get your permission to send this out to bid.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, Bill, is there any provision for the damaged perimeter railing as well? I mean, since once
No.
you...
This
Okay.
project doesn't include the damaged railing. We're looking at a concept on that damaged railing, because whatever we do with the walkway on Table Mountain by the fish hatchery, we want to bring that around so it kind of ties everything together. And the concept we're looking at for that now is we're looking at a design, engineer, and build package. That way it's all one thing and it's not hung up any particular place, and we can get this to you. You know what your price is out the door, and we can get this thing repaired and bring it back, but we're not to that point yet. We can have our staff is down to 2 people. Unfortunately, we had another employee resign for other employment, so we're down to 2, but we can ask our staff to go out there and try to at least get that bent back up so it doesn't look quite as bad. We're very aware of the markings on the roadway and all the other things that are being brought to us. It's an unfortunate reality of where we're at right now with our staffing, is that we have to prioritize what are we going to be doing. One of the projects that, just for another cleanup one, just so you have the information, is the signs at Table Mountain and Grand. Those were brought to us as faded and worn out. that sat for quite a while, didn't get any attention. Councilperson Draper asked me about this and reminded me of it. And once she did that, I got in contact with our street supervisor, who then got in contact with our sign people. I'm happy to report the signs have been removed. They're out being refinished right now, and you should be seeing those signs go up in the next couple weeks, and they'll be legible. So, it isn't that we're not just ignoring what people are telling us. It's a matter of, the time to get to it and prioritizing what those issues are.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, certainly support this particular project, because I use that quite often. And you are correct, the backup on Montgomery Street many times goes all the way up to Linden, many times during the day. And the rumble strips, I think, will help out immensely. The other one I want to just maybe put on the list is I think the speed radar signs at the new roundabout at Table Mountain or Nelson and Cherokee and Table Mountain. I think those have either failed, been stolen, something. I think they're solar powered, but we just add that to the list. There were originally signs there, and means how we're doing this work, it might be good to have the same contractor repair those. I think they're radar solar supported signs.
I believe the one on Nelson still works, but the one on Table Mountain, it seems like it's
Right.
stopped
Just add
for
that
some
to the
reason.
list,
Okay,
yeah.
I will put it on the list.
Thank you.
Councilmember Draper.
Because I live just a few blocks from this intersection, I'm really aware of some of the problems with it. And I like the roundabout. I think a roundabout was the best choice there. But as I'm sure you're aware, the cars coming down Orange onto Montgomery, that's not usually, they're not the ones that are hitting it at 35, 40 miles an hour and just going. It's usually coming from the high school, from Washington, heading up to Grand, or coming down the hill from Grand. Those roads are the ones where people just get there and they go. And the drivers on Orange and Montgomery, you'll see them backed up, like Councilor Pittman said, down to Linden Street, because they can't get in. And if they're coming down the hill from either way, they think they've got the right of way somehow. And so they just hit it. Everybody else waits until it's completely clear. And so I don't know how these rumble strips, how powerful they are as far as when a car's tires hit them, or would that be something that would slow these drivers down that are coming downhill?
I think it's going to cause you to brake because you're going to be going over something that's going to actually make the front of your car vibrate up and down. Now, it's not going to be like a speed hump or anything like
Okay.
that. I think what we probably at this point should do is let's install them all the way around, and then the answer may be, maybe what we do is we remove the one on the Bird Street side, or I'm sorry, the New Montgomery side, and see, does that help? I mean, if it doesn't, then maybe we leave them all and we put in a speed hump in front of the rumble strip to cause people to brake before they hit that, if that's not being effective. Because I agree with you, we do need to find a way to
Yeah, it's weird.
slow that traffic coming down through there, and also off of the bridge, because that does congest the other two sides.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Madam Clerk, does anyone wish to speak on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have one speaker, the cameraman.
Good evening again, Council. I'd just like to comment on this item. I think we should put this out to bid and potentially get some different estimates. Preferably, it's kind of concerning when it's going to be $20,000 for solar power signs, $16,000 for strips, but $420,000 for these illuminated crosswalks. I mean, that's a really high price. So maybe when we put that out to bid, we could get maybe a more reasonable offer, but unless $420,000 is the most reasonable bid you could come up for the job, but it just seems kind of interesting. And two, my question is, if we have these strips and we have these flashing signs that indicate that there's going to be a crosswalk, well, shouldn't we maybe paint the crosswalk to be yellow or a different color so it's brighter instead of having to illuminate the crosswalk entirely. I mean, white is a bright color, but yellow is bright as well. So, depending on which one is going to be better of the reflection of the headlights at night, that's not up for me to determine. That's what this project and study is for. And two, I think these, regardless of whatever the bid comes out to, I do believe that these safety additions are needed. Personally, I'm not afraid of a roundabout. I know how to use a roundabout. It's not that difficult to do. Some people find it to be a monumental task to conquer, and it's really not that difficult. I'm just terrified of the roundabout when other people are in it because they may not necessarily know how to use it. For example, which is very common, is as you're exiting the roundabout, you're supposed to indicate with your right indicator. So the person waiting that's yielding will know that you're exiting the roundabout so they can go. But some people don't do that, and you end up waiting and
Mr. Mayor, that is the only speaker I had.
Thank you.
Just for clarity, Mr. Mayor, we are not going out to bid on the $420,000 aspect of that project. That was not approved. As far as color of sidewalks, that's regulated by your vehicle code. We don't get to decide what color we're going to paint those. So this project will be put out to bid for the two aspects of the solar lighting and the rumble strips. The in-house repainting of the side or the crosswalks will be done by our staff with council approval.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve to release this for bid.
I make a motion that we approve the recommendations from staff.
I second that.
Motion carries.
All right, moving on to item number 5.
Can I get the next PowerPoint, please? Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you tonight is consideration of the release of an RFP, a request for proposal, for fire service for the city of Oroville. I want to be really clear with everybody. No decision is going to be made tonight as far as changing fire service, doing anything with it. All we're talking about tonight is releasing a request for proposal to find out what that service would look like and what it would cost from essentially CAL FIRE. There's nobody else in the area, I believe, that could handle our fire service or that is equipped to and fulfill all of the things that we need. The RFP contains some requirements within it that I think it's important for the council and the community to know at this point. The first thing that everybody should be aware of is this is not a quick process. This is going to take us anywhere from 18 to 24 months to complete this process. Prior to this decision being made, there will be public engagement in this. We will invite the public to come down, ask questions, give their input, so that the council will have a full picture and will be able to consider what those questions are, what that input is. This is not about the quality of the service. We have great firemen. They do a wonderful job for us. They're good people. I have nothing bad to say about them. What we're here to talk about in this particular RFP is the quantity of service and the depth of service. The reality is Oroville has 15 firefighters. When we are at our max, 15 is what we have. I mean, we are talking about looking at a larger organization that may be able to provide more. They have a greater depth of service, they have a greater depth of equipment, they have a greater depth, not necessarily of knowledge of this community, but they do certainly have a greater depth that they can provide. We own no helicopters. We own no bulldozers. We own no water tenders. All of this equipment is available through the CAL FIRE contract. We do receive the benefit of that through mutual aid, but we do not own any of that equipment. One thing that this will do for us is this will stop adding to our PERS unfunded liability. It's not going to get rid of it. It's not going to eliminate it. The people that are there that we have incurred this liability for and this obligation, we will continue to have that liability and obligation. We just won't be adding to it anymore if we were to go to an outside contract for this type of service. The day-to-day operation of the fire service will be ran by CAL FIRE under CAL FIRE policies. What you will still control as a council will be the size of the service and the scope of the service. And what I mean by that is what types of calls for service that you want to respond to. You will be able to set those parameters for the service if that's what you choose to do. This may help with the loss of homeowners insurance and increases that we're experiencing in the area, not just our area, but I believe all of California because of wildfire. I believe that potentially buying into a larger organization with greater depth may help with that. There are people in the city right now, in our city limits, that are losing their homeowners policies, or they're getting policies through the state that are just so expensive, it makes it very difficult for them to afford the insurance and maintain home ownership. So looking into this is probably a prudent thing to do to see if that will help. There's no guarantee it's going to. There's no guarantee it's going to do anything, but I don't think it's going to hurt anything to ask the question. Measure U was passed with the intent of enhancing public safety. Enhancing does not necessarily mean doing what you've always been done because that's what you've always done and just adding more to it. It may mean looking at another provider. I don't think it hurts anything to ask the question. It doesn't hurt anything to look at it. I think we must educate ourselves. We must spend this money as prudently as possible and buy the most service that we can buy for our citizens with their money. So I believe that this is an appropriate use of Measure U funding if we had to utilize it. The request for proposal contains some things that are important, not only to me, but I believe should be to you and should be to everyone. If the council did decide to go this direction, our current staff will be offered employment. It will be a decision of our current staff if they wish to continue their employment now with CAL FIRE serving at the Oroville station. They will have to meet criteria and do everything necessary, but they will be given the opportunity. Our engines will be marked with Oroville Fire and CAL FIRE, so we're still maintaining our identity. It's going to be changed, but we're still attempting to maintain our identity by making sure that our markings are still on our vehicles. Our staffing will be the same configuration or one that provides better coverage, which means you'll have the same number of firefighters there, potentially more, or a different way that they rotate through their days off and their days on. Our local fire station will remain open. We are not closing the fire station. Essentially, it's going to be, quite honestly, for people that are not involved with it, it'll be difficult to tell that anything changed. But there will be change, and this is a difficult thing. This is something that is difficult for our firefighters. I told you, they're good people. I mean, this is not about the quality of service or anything else. This is about providing the most service that we can provide for our community. So with that, what we're asking you to do tonight, and this is all this item is tonight, is authorize permission to release the request for proposal. If we release the request for proposal tonight, it will go out. It will be out until, well, on September 14th, there'll be an informational meeting for those interested in bidding on this that can ask any questions regarding the request for proposal. That is something that staff will handle. On December 4th, the proposals are due to the city. On February 4th, the council will be provided the proposals on December 5th, most likely. You will have an opportunity, since it's the holidays, to review them until February 4th. At February 4th, if the council so chooses, you will be able to do interviews of the applying agencies. So then at that point, you can begin to decide what path you'd like to take and what decision process that you will be using on this. So with that, what staff is looking for is just direction on releasing this proposal.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers from the dais on this? Councilmember Goodson.
Chief, I have a question. I'm sorry. City Administrator. On page 4, it states that the city requests the proposer present a fire service model for the city of Oroville that would not exceed an annual contract amount in year 1 of approximately $2,750,000. And so we do realize that every year CAL FIRE has not only a COLA, but a salary increase. I believe 2 years ago it was anywhere from 3 to 5%. So it can be, so let's assume that they would come in with this figure. It's guaranteed, we know it's going to be increased, and so how are we going to be able to absorb those costs? I mean, you have 1% monies that are only going to reach so far. And from what I can see, we have already spent those 4 and 5 times over. So I'm just curious, how would we absorb the additional amount?
It's the same way you absorb any cost. You know, it is done with the natural growth of business, with the natural growth of revenue. You have that right now with your current employment contracts. They grow. Those escalators are already built in. The intent of the sentence was to demonstrate that there is going to be an escalator, so the council is aware of that, and it will be 3 to 5%, probably
Will
each
be.
year. I
It
mean, I
will
would
be
not.
3
that
to
would-
5%.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all.
And
But
so
but
we're
it is something
prepared-
we must be
We're
aware.
prepared for that, is what you're saying.
Well, you're not approving a contract.
No,
You're
I
sending out a
understand that.
request to find out.
Right,
Because we don't
I'm-
know. We're speculating, but I think you're probably correct in your
Okay.
speculation.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the dais? Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have one speaker, Sherry Bunker.
Good evening, council. Thank you for this opportunity. 2012, 2013, we went through this exercise, and it was far less expensive to keep what we had in place than to go out and bid, to have somebody come in, CAL FIRE come in and bid. We did this for the police department, we did it for the fire department. This is not a good idea. The public was overwhelmingly, we want our fire department. We don't want CAL FIRE. Just think about that, because this is our fire department. This is our city. It's not CAL FIRE. And they don't always go with our ideas of the way things should be. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers?
Mr. Mayor, that was the only public speaker that I have a blue card for.
Looking for a motion to authorize staff to release a request for proposal for fire protection services for the city of Oroville.
I want to say one thing before I make a motion, and that's nobody on this council that I know of has any desire to arbitrarily choose to make changes for the sake of change. We were elected on this council to serve the community and to look for options that best serve the community. And that's really all this conversation is about. We may end up going the same path as what happened in 2012. However, it may come through this process, if approved tonight, that we can find something that better serves the community for a better bang for your buck. And that's really what we're looking for, is to see if this is a better option for our community. That's all it is. It is a conversation that we want to have and look at all of our options on the table instead of just looking to do all that we've always done. We want to see what's best for the community. So with that, I make a motion to approve the release for proposals to go out and see what our options are.
I'll second.
Motion carries.
Moving on to reports, discussions, and correspondence. Are there any announcements from the council? Councilmember Draper.
Tuesday, August 27th, I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting from 9 to 12:30. And it was a pretty memorable meeting and a very memorable thing for Butte County. They unanimously approved the additional money to the budget, and they added 4 new positions to the Department of Human Resources: Housing and Homeless Administrator, Housing Navigator, Program Manager, and Administrative Analyst. And so they said they had $410,000 that they received from various state and federal funding entities. So that was really an exciting thing to see, that they are taking such leadership in our area about the homeless situation, and that they are attempting to do something about it. So that was pretty neat. And then I also attended the NAACP Planning Committee meeting for the first annual fundraiser, which will be held December 7th. And I'm very excited about that and happy to be involved. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, this past week, our docents had an open house, and I was able to catch part of that. And again, I just appreciate all that they do. They're volunteers, and we have lovely museums in our city. And I just, again, encourage all of us from time to time to just acquaint yourself with the wonderful history that we have here in our city. It is really quite amazing, and we have something to be proud of. And so it's just a treasure. And if you have kids, I just encourage you, maybe once in a while, once every couple of years, take them through there and introduce them to the rich history of our community. And again, I just want to shout out to our docents. Thank you very much for caring for our precious resources.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the servant on the scoreboard. One of the things going on there is there's a technical advisory subcommittee of the SCORE that is working on a lot of issues, in particular to this plan. And I just wanted to let folks know that the entire board is working on the issue of increasing capacity. I think I can universally say that, we're not there yet, but we're hoping that we can work forward a plan to increase capacity, because as the community grows, there's a big need for that. And I don't think, I'll say this scoreboard wants to see that happen and facilitate that. So that's a message to carry back. The other thing, I also serve on another body called the Housing Authority, and I'll tell you that that group is working very hard trying to find ways to put new housing in not just Oroville, but Chico, the whole county. But there's a big focus on Oroville right now because we have the real estate to do it with. So those are two things that you don't see a lot of work being done because it doesn't produce any bricks and mortar, but there's a lot of folks working on a lot of projects, and hopefully we'll see them come about.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other comments.
Actually, just want to give a shout out, was at the Chamber's dinner. I figured you were going to share something about that. But was at the dinner here last week, and Eric with the Chamber did a great job putting that together. The year prior, it was pretty low attendance and just kind of lackluster, and this year it was completely different. And a large community, just a lot of people came out for it. It was done really well, and just want to thank Eric and the Chamber for all that they did. And it's amazing to see what's happening in the community. A lot of great things are moving forward, and there's a lot of momentum and communities coming together to see things happen. So it's good job.
He brings up a real good point that occurred at that meeting, and I'm not trying to take words from Bob Wentz, but one of the things that he announced is that this community has been under the scope and eyeball of the investors from New York for the last few months, because their project for the hospital was basically funded with bond sales. And we have been under intense scrutiny for a lot of things. And the one thing that Mr. Wentz offered, that the resilience of this community, because we've been hammered with a lot of things here lately between fires, floods, we've been on the radar. The prevailing thing was they saw huge interest in seeing a return on their investment to this community. Consequently, when they had the day for the bond sales, Mr. Wentz needed $277 million. 200? And he exceeded that and made it all the way to 1.3 billion. So that's folks in back east in that huge bond market saying, we look to invest in Oroville. That's a good story to tell. And so that, when we say we see new interest coming, they're pretty serious about it. If somebody will put $1.3 billion of money toward us. I don't know what they're going to do with the hospital, if they're going to make a bigger hospital, but I haven't heard that plan. But he announced that and told the story. So it's kind of nice to hear about.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on this as well, Dave. These people that invest this money, New York, from anywhere, really, investors, they're not sentimental people. They're not emotional. They're sharks. And I will tell you that they looked at Oroville like they were under a microscope, and they decided that you were a good investment. So, good job. And Eric, a phenomenal job. Couldn't believe it. Hundreds of people, just absolutely like you would imagine it to be. And you at the helm are just really good at what you do, sir. So moving on to future agenda items. Is there anyone who wishes to put anything on the agenda?
You mentioned a full package engineering with that wall. I can probably talk to you separate about it, but is there going to be a release for that proposal?
Yeah, I will work with our engineer to put together what we're going to call it a design, engineer, and build package to bring back to the council regarding that wall.
So we need our engineer to do that, or?
No, our engineer needs to tell us what is the building, if it's
Gotcha.
like a Caltrans 3
Sure.
or whatever is necessary for that type of a walkway.
Gotcha.
All right, no one else? Administration reports, Ruth?
I have a report attached to the agenda, letting you know that the CalPERS unfunded liability increased over $3 million last year due to them not making their investment return target of 7%. So it's a very volatile number that if they don't hit their investment returns, then we all have to pony up. That's even after making huge payments. So I just put that in the back of the agenda if anybody's interested in that information.
One thing on that, I talked to you about this before, about PERS and the volatility of it. Just correct me if I'm wrong, from what our conversation was, is that even if we almost or completely paid off all that we owe, they could still come back and ask for more. Is that?
That would have definitely happened this year. As you can see, we pay our PEPRA off every year because it's low enough and it comes back every year. So we would have had, we did. We paid it off last year and it came back due to the difference in the investment rate of return. And that they only missed it by 0.3%. So it shows you if we ever really hit a recession, how bad that would be. That would be really bad.
And so, for me, with that information, it just, I like the fact that we're putting money in a reserve account, but I'm not in favor of necessarily throwing money at a
Right.
bottomless pit, just a black hole
Right.
that, again, you can throw millions of dollars towards it, and then they come back tomorrow and say,
It does come back.
we want more.
And I did ask because they are charging us interest, so I did ask at the conference, why are not more people just trying to pay it off with everything they had? And one of the comments was, well, we don't want to give them more money to lose. So it's got to be a happy balance of where we try to pay off what we can, but not give it everything we have, because who knows what's going to happen with the fund. If it ever dropped below 55 to 50%, the whole fund is in jeopardy of going under. So we have to watch this one really close.
Yeah, it's definitely something that our legislators at the state level need
Yes.
to have
That
as
would
a
be
top
another
priority.
thing. If we paid everything we had to lower it and then the state gave a bailout, then we wouldn't be part of that because we already put in so much. So I think we just have to monitor it and do everything that we can and make decisions as best we can.
Thank you, Ruth. You're doing a great job.
And just for clarity, when we say pay off everything we owe, what we're talking about is paying off our unfunded liability. We're not talking about buying ourselves out of PERS. I mean, those are two completely different numbers, and there's been some confusion about that. So
Yeah.
if we were to pay everything we owed for unfunded liability, that amount will come back, or an amount if they don't reach their projections next year to us. So just so we have clarity on that, because there has been some confusion
Right,
about
the
that.
termination, the estimated termination liability, the last time we looked into that was 73 million. So if we paid 73 million, then everybody would be covered for the rest of their life. So it's a different number.
That'd be great to get out of the hole.
Yeah.
Maybe a secondary company to
Right. Yeah.
get that and then just pay that instead of having
Yeah, I
a,
thought about that a lot, but then if we hit a recession, then I probably would have to move.
We could ask Bob Wentz. He got 1.3 billion.
right? Put bonds out for our city,
We'll just ask.
right? He's got an extra 7. Anyway,
Councilmember Goodson.
I think it's important for us all to be more prudent in spending of our tax dollars, not just because of PERS, but when you look at the debt ratio, I just want to bring up, and I haven't heard this brought up in this new year with this new council, that we do have a bond proceeds debt of approximately $15 million that is due by 2030. So it's important to be prudent, fiscally responsible, and not forget that we have some outstanding balances out there.
Councilperson Goodson, if I could address that. The
Yes.
$15 million is, when we're using the term due, means that it will be paid in full in 2030.
In 2030, right.
It is not a balloon payment. We make annual payments on that.
Yes, we do.
So just so everybody's aware that that is something that, I believe it's 2031.
2030.
You're absolutely right.
Right,
And
just
those
so-
payments, how we make those payments is from our property taxes.
Correct.
So we don't see any of that money. It goes directly to pay for that.
Correct. And in 2031, what we'll begin to see is that $1.2 million will come back to the general fund as general fund dollars. So I just want to make sure there was no misunderstanding that we have a balloon payment that's going to hit us hard on.
Right.
I mean, it's hard enough as it is now, but 15 million would be incredibly difficult in 2031.
Councilmember Smith.
We've all heard the classic term, because everybody's doing it, it makes it okay. But in this particular case, it's almost like that. I remember when I first sitting in this as a school board trustee member, and I learned that we have this huge multi-million-dollar unfunded liability to CalPERS, and that's in part because for every one employee that's working for the city today, there's 2 that are retired, and we're all living longer. And so you have all these compounding factors, and so I just think it's important for the public to understand that what we're really talking about here is the retirement for all the folks that have worked for the city over the years. And so that continues to grow and mount, and it just becomes more and more challenging to meet those obligations that we have. But Oroville is not unique. It's all across the spectrum, statewide, in all the various public agencies, from schools and cities and on and on and on. So I thought it just important to kind of just bring that out and clarify that, what we're talking about.
I also need to add, though, that Oroville is in so much better shape than virtually every other agency. Oroville does have the capacity to pay this unfunded liability. I absolutely agree there's no reason to get ahead of the game. I personally think we ought to put money into a reserve, because I do think eventually the state's going to have to bail out this system. But to put it in perspective, Oroville owes, what, 24 million?
25 now.
25. City of Chico's 141 million, Redding's 200 million. Oroville, again, has the ability to pay if we had to. Those other communities do not.
Thank you.
No, that's really, it's due to.
Yeah, no, it's, yeah.
It is.
Thank you.
I don't want to get in a round house discussion here about this either and take an hour on this, but Councilmember Goodson would like to speak again.
So I want to give you another perspective. Napa, $100 million in their reserve. They pay their CalPERS every year with an additional 20% on top of that. Now that's healthy, and I would like to see us move in that direction someday.
Okay, moving on. Bill, do you have any comments?
Just a couple. I'd like to invite the council to the fire department on the 19th and the 20th in the afternoons. If you would like to go up there, Eric King, one of our engineers, has invited the council to come up there, have dinner with the fire department, and also go for a ride-along and see what the fire department's doing, how they're doing it. And the only thing we ask is that you wear flat-toed closed shoes and pants or some sort of active wear so that you can get in and out of the engines and see what the fire department does, interact with them. They're a good group of guys. The other thing I'd like to do is thank Pastor Thompson. He also is not only a pastor, but he is also a businessman. He owns a janitorial service in town, and I'm going to have to ask for his forgiveness because I cannot remember the name of the company. I wish I did because I want to give him the kudos that it deserves. But he has come into City Hall, and he has refinished the floors in the front lobby for us at no cost. Did it all on his own dime, and we just wanted to just say thank you, very much appreciate it. The floors looked much better this morning, and they were going to put, I believe, a second coat on today, and it's probably going to look that much better tomorrow. So thank you, Pastor Thompson. Please, everyone spend their time finding the name of the business and patronize them if that's what you're looking for.
Great, thank you. Tom?
Yeah, a few very quick ones. As I mentioned, Assembly Bill 430 today passed the Senate. There'll be reconciliation at the Assembly, then it goes to the governor's desk. As I think you all probably have read and know, we did receive the $2 million appropriation through the budget. The money hasn't yet, again, hit the finance department. Hopefully it will soon. But the biggest thing I want to say is there's a reception to meet the new city administrator, Bill Lagrone, at the Table Mountain Golf Course, September 18th at 5 to 7. There'll be a brief presentation. Bill's going to give a long speech at 5:30.
Appreciate that.
Could I just ask you to repeat, Mr. Lagrone? You said September 19th and 20th
Yes,
for
ma'am.
that fire department thing. What time is that?
You can go anytime in the afternoon you like, whatever works for you. I think
Okay.
they usually eat dinner 5:30, 6 o'clock-ish.
And another question, is there any age limit on the passengers?
I don't believe so. As long as they can get in and out of the engine, I think they're good to go. I don't think they're going to let you drive, though, so.
No.
They never would let me.
I'm watching 3 of my grandkids while my son and his wife are in Scotland, and so I was wondering if
What are their
9,
ages?
6, and 4-year-olds could come see this.
I think so. I don't see
Okay.
why they couldn't
I
at
might
least
bring
come
them
down
along
and then, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Tom? Sam? Nothing? Leo?
Each one of you actually, I printed up an activity report for you, each have it. Just a few highlights on that. Vista Del Oro is pretty exciting. The gentleman exercised his option on that, so he has secured the property, and we're finalizing the remaining outstanding items between what was approved before and where we are now. And that's 70 homes, and he plans on submitting master plans come October, so that's pretty exciting there. Beyond that, we're looking at, actually, come the end of the month, we'll be looking at getting an initial framework together for just an opportunity for some talking points on the South Oroville, things to go forward and some ideas on how we might look at configuring some of the zoning and whatnot there. It's just a really initial point of start to get some feedback from everyone. And then in the housing department, Amy has actually had some discussions with Veteran Housing Community Development. They have 3 possible projects they're kicking around, and so there's some things on that end there, as well as Four Bay Estates. Chip is looking at possibly revitalizing that old subdivision. So quite a bit on the horizon here. Regular daily building traffic is going well, both commercial and residentially, and we continue to have good application activity as well. So I can answer any questions if you have any specifics on the list. It's quite a long list, but it's pretty exciting.
I got a question for you. Thanks for the report here.
Where's my screen, Jackie? Councilmember Goodson's in the queue.
Yeah, I thought. Thompson.
Councilmember Pittman's in the queue.
Oh, all right. Just curious, we've kind of kicked this can down the roads through several councils in regards to the affordable housing. And we know that it was passed down that Oroville is lacking approximately 1,686 units. That's mine. And so if you minus the 40 where the senior housing is going up. So I'm just curious. We talked about a jamboree housing in that area in South Oroville. Is that something that you're working on, affordable housing in that area? And what does that look like?
From a subsidized affordable housing, I mean, typically, affordable housing, we look at two different ways: less expensive market rate housing and subsidized affordable housing. From the subsidized affordable housing, Amy's more versed on that than I am, but that was the activity recently she had that she asked me to put on here, as well as Chip being involved in trying to get that going over on the east side, or on the west side of town. In South Oroville, that's why we're putting together this initial idea on rezoning and bringing that in. So that's going to be a process of stakeholder meetings, getting out, we'll probably start at the planning commission, get it out there as a very loose framework to start getting, with the map and getting people ideas and how we might want to look at that. You guys obviously be involved as council members in public stakeholder meetings as well. And that's a process of getting a lot of people involved, seeing what that looks like, seeing where the possibility lies. Then once we start to get that framework, seeing where the investment lies. That is an opportunity zone. It's a designated opportunity zone down there. So different investors who have capital gain obligations, that's where that comes into play with that. There's some opportunity there, but we'll have to kind of see where that comes from. Quite frankly, I'm still getting into the process as far as becoming more familiar with the city and where those opportunities lie. Spent some time, quite a bit of time, a few hours down there today. Been doing that basically every week I'm here. I spend some time down there kind of looking around. I think there's a lot of opportunity down there. It just depends on how we package it and how we try to encourage people to invest in it. So it's kind of vague, but that's kind of, it's a starting line.
It's my
again.
understanding that you're working on it, and you actually went there today, boots on the ground, to get a bird's eye view.
So
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Councilperson Goodson, I can add to that too. Amy and I today had a conversation regarding a location in South Oroville that we've previously talked about. And we are going to be meeting with the people from Jamboree Housing regarding that particular location. So we have not forgot about that. It is very slow, but it is on our mind because I believe that is an excellent place for
Prime
that.
location.
And it's a game changer for that particular part of that
Absolutely.
neighborhood.
All right.
So we're still working toward that as late as, we actually just had the conversation today before noon.
Kudos. Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, Jamboree has a project going in Chico too, so they're not the only, this wouldn't be the only project they have in Butte County. Question to the Four Bay Estates, is Chip looking at the entire original project or a portion of that? Or do you know?
It's just initial conversation. They're not quite sure what they can bite off on that at this point in time. Typically, when you have something that's previously entitled, you kind of want to stick to that because we can help facilitate getting that back up and running. You start messing with entitlements that were originally there, you're kind of starting over, so it kind of defeats some of the advantage of being able to streamline a process like that. So you kind of have to be careful on what you end up, how much you mess with a project that was previously entitled. You can bite off pieces sometimes, but you usually can't change the entitlement side of it. Yeah.
That's good to hear, though.
It's exciting, yeah.
That could be a great project.
They
for
liked
that
it because of
area.
the location near the school and whatnot. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. Two questions. One being just interest in regards to the sidewalk on Lincoln between Oro Dam and going all the way down to Myers. The county did some of that here recently. It'd be great for the community to have safe ways for kids that are walking to school, but also people coming into town. Right now, there's no sidewalk in that whole area on Lincoln. The traffic's pretty fast, so I believe from my conversations with Bill Connolly that they're open to working together with us on completing that all the way into Oro Dam. And so just to kind of put a bug in your hat, if possible, we can at least start that conversation, because I think that'd be a huge benefit for everybody living in the area to have a safe way to walk into town as opposed to just in the dirt. The second one being, what's the process As the population grows, we're looking at 70 homes there in Thermalito. It's Vista de Oro, yeah. As the population grows out there, and we just had a community, the development that was out farther past the golf course there, as the traffic increases there, which I'm well aware of because I live out there, what's the process and timeline to possibly add another stoplight like at Larkin? Because, like I said, traffic goes pretty fast through there, and it's pretty dangerous sometimes to get out in the street. So at least having some place that people can get to and not fear getting hit from one direction to the other while getting on the road.
Well, every time a subdivision comes in, they get studied, and it's at a point, it gets to a point where they will trigger traffic studies. And when they trigger the traffic studies, that gets looked at. Fortunately and unfortunately, that traffic out there gets divided two ways, right? You can go out to 99 or you can come into town. And so what ends up happening, that tends to not appear to be as big a burden at times when you look at traffic studies and traffic counts. But Vista del Oro actually was part of, they actually they're part of what funded the traffic, the intersection light that we have at where 70 crosses over. So that was funded partially by this originally. But it does every time we build out in an area, we take traffic studies get triggered, they get looked at, and at that point in time, it's deemed whether or not it requires a additional street light, roundabout, whatnot. Street lights for intersections seem to be not in fashion. Roundabouts seem to be in fashion these days. But yeah.
Do you know when that last study was when they put the light there? You said on 99.
You know what? I'd have to look back on that. It was in the early 2000s when those subdivisions were all going. Probably
Gotcha.
in the 06 range, I imagine.
My guess is going to be triggered pretty fast because with the Lyman College and the new housing and now the additional new housing, already it's pretty sketchy sometimes getting in the road.
Yeah, like I said, as new subdivisions come in, those get triggered. Traffic studies are required. When they are required, it will kick it off at times. But it's a four-way intersection is a few $1 million to get done. So that ends up, those all. But it gets triggered by the environment.
It is a state route, so it's actually Caltrans that would make that determination. And the city can petition them anytime you want. It's quite a process, as Leo's outlining. They're going to do a whole series of traffic studies, and they're pretty strict on their warrants, unfortunately, until somebody gets hurt. And then that's usually what honestly triggers them putting it in.
Gotcha. Yeah, I knew it was outside of our purview, just curious on the process.
Chief? All right, well, I'd like to take a minute to say happy birthday to one of our lifelong citizens. Gives a great contribution to this town, Lorraine Christensen. And 54 years ago today, she turned 18, and 2 days later, her and Steve were married. So, happy birthday, Lorraine.
And also, Tom's birthday was yesterday, too. Happy birthday, Tom.
Happy birthday, Tom.
I have a question of Tom. PG&E and the underground, any improvements or updates to that?
No, the short answer is no. We've talked about it, and we've also talked about, more importantly, what burden it would bring to the businesses on Meyer Street or whatever street, because we can change it to another location. I'm going to back up a step and try and be quick. Rule 20A, PG&E sets aside money that we pay, it's not free money, to underground utilities. But they'll only underground it in the public right-of-way, then the adjoining businesses are responsible for connecting and changing their connections to PG&E. So it's not cost-free. So we've been talking about how we could, with PG&E, perhaps mitigate that.
Okay, are we all satisfied? This meeting is adjourned.